The Earth's mightiest heroes are all over the world right now. They're in comics, TV, movies, toy aisle at the grocery store, and will be facing Thanos soon to bring back all the people that vanished after the snap heard around the world. The concept of the Avengers has fueled imagination in the casual moviegoer or the avid comic book collector. Would it not be awesome to be able to fly anywhere on Earth, or to have the strength to lift almost anything? Of course it would. So if the Avengers were real and African, how would this change the world we live in? That is what we'll talk about today on Green Click. By the way, be a friend and subscribe, share and like to help us make more videos you love about our great continent. Let's dive in. So let's quickly transform the Avengers into Africans. Iron Man is Tony Standard from South Africa. Thor is Shango, the Nigerian god of thunder. Black Widow is Nontando Rui from Namibia. Hawkeye is Chitundu Barasa from Kenya. The Hawk is a scientist from Egypt, and the leader of the group, Captain Ghana, is Kweku Muntari. We can add Chala, the Black Panther, as well to this list since he's from East Africa. If the Avengers were African, people would have different opinions on them. Some people would love them because they would be Africa's defenders, ones they would aspire to be. Then you would have some who would hate them because they would generally see their flaws and mistakes that actually make them human. And then some people would worship them. Shango is the Nigerian version of Thor, and his existence would mean that the Orishas are alive and well. Lastly, you would have those who would fear the Hulk, only thinking of him as a demonic spirit that possessed a man. Iron Man would be envied and constantly ask for donations or sponsorship, while Black Widow could be looked down upon, as some African countries still do not practice equality among sexes. If the Avengers were African, there is one thing that would usually follow them, and that is destruction, because with superheroes, supervillains would roam around as well, and their countless bouts would create casualties and billions of dollars in repairs. The world would be a completely different place, as this would mean that we have traditional deities that exist. This would also mean we've gotten in contact with aliens from other planets. It would also mean technology would have jumped thousands of years ahead of what we know right now. But on a more grounded level, the Avengers would have to decide which nations they would serve, which government they would listen to, and what jurisdictions they would have over the African continent. Some nations would not be welcome into the Avengers, as we would think. Even though the Avengers would save the day on multiple occasions, the destruction and political implications alone would create friction with bigger governing parties. One would think that the African Avengers would affect the crime rate in some African countries, but it might be otherwise. As mentioned earlier, some countries could close their borders to the Avengers, which could cause frustration if the Avengers are witnessing crimes against humanity that they could not stop. The Avengers generally would only deal with higher priority threats than the random robbing of a gas station down the street. Another factor that will really bog down the Avengers would be dealing with an idea. See, if a terrorist group like Boko Haram was dismantled by the Avengers, there would be nothing that could stop another selfless terrorist harboring the same ideologies to take up the mantle of the previously toppled leader. In reality, the Avengers would also need some form of therapy, a place to relax and discuss the emotional toll being a hero can take. Surely being a hero does not mean you will save everyone. And being an Avenger, you might see people getting killed more than the average soldier. How would their psychological endurance be monitored? One elephant in the room would be America. How would America react to knowing that there is a force that could wipe out their entire army with some ease? They would have secret protocols on how to deal with these individual superheroes in case they ever came to blows, and could even try their best to get their hands on Iron Man's technology, or whatever brings the Hulk out of Bruce Banner. But how would the Avengers help society, apart from fighting crime and promoting world peace? Well, Iron Man's technology could be used to improve cyber protection, or even aid medical scientists in combating cancer and other diseases. Studying the Hulk could teach us how to cure diseases or regrow organs, and Shango could go out further into space than the Voyager and get photos of the unknown. That would push humanity forward, wouldn't it? But anyways, I would love to have the ability to multiply myself, so that I could feed myself, entertain myself, and talk to myself at the same time. By the way, which Avenger do you see yourself as, if you had the choice to be one? Thank you for spending a few minutes. 15-year-old boy with a tough background chosen to defend the earth from all kinds of threats. He was chosen by a wizard at the Rock of Eternity with the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury. All he has to do is utter the words Shazam, and he is transformed into an adult version of himself. With all the powers bestowed onto him, he rivals the strength of Superman and can move as fast as the Flash. If Shazam was real, the world would be a completely different place. But what if he was African? How would the world react? What would it be like? This is what we'll talk about today on Green Click. By the way, be a friend and subscribe. Share and like to help us make more videos you love about our great continent. Let's dive in. Let's say Billy Batson was real and African. He could be from any country in Africa, and maybe his name would be Bayo Badmos from Nigeria. Barasa Bidok from Kenya, or even Bongani Baloyi from South Africa. After having supremely enhanced physical strength and super speed, he has the enhanced durability to deal with massive punches and take impact from missiles. He can go on for an extremely long time without eating, drinking, sleeping, or breathing, meaning he could exist in a vacuum of space for almost eternity. He can also hypnotize some minds and deduce the weaknesses of others before he comes into contact with them. He can command bolts of lightning, and he has an abundance of courage that makes him invulnerable to mental attacks or possession. His wisdom allows him to understand any language and even extreme science. A real-life Shazam would be a boy that has the purest of hearts, regardless of what he would have experienced as a child. Upon receiving the powers of Shazam, he would protect the world from magical threats, but would Africa love him? If Shazam saved your family from a kidnapping or an accident, you'd be grateful for his existence. If you were someone that has been in the crossfires of a fight between Shazam and a villain, you'd be anxious of constant destruction and the cleanup that is required after a scuffle. If you were a villain, well, you would definitely not be fond of a superhero foiling your every plan for domination. Ultimately, who you are depends on your attitude towards Shazam. However, the world would change as you would be used to seeing people flying across the skies or zooming past you in traffic jams. Imagine living in a world where people are consistently plotting to drop a nuclear bomb or even mind control a whole city into slavery. Because he could wield the power of lightning, he would probably be worshipped by some locals as a deity. Some Africans would think he's Shango, the West African god of lightning. As a person, Shazam would deal with inner battles to stave off corruption. Having so much power could make an adult feel invincible. Now imagine that power in a 15-year-old boy. The good thing is Shazam channels the wisdom of Solomon, so he should be okay. He would also have to keep his identity a secret. If his enemies realize that he was just a 15-year-old boy that has to utter the words, what would stop them from attacking him at a vulnerable moment before he could shout out the words, Shazam? He would occasionally battle with moral dilemmas. The heroes of the DC universe subscribe to the no-kill policy, and if you keep putting villains in jail and they keep escaping or are let out of jail by manipulating the law, what is stopping them from being a continuous nuisance to the community? This would figuratively tie Shazam's hands, and it could lead to the boy becoming an anti-hero that leaves villains to die. If this ended up happening, however, he could lose his worthiness to wield the powers given to him. He would live in a world where politicians that are corrupt will constantly win. This could take a toll on a 15-year-old boy, as his innocence and immaturity would be his weakness. The government of the country could try to manipulate his immaturity to aid them in a war if there was a tension between nations. Well, with Shazam, there would also be villains, superheroes, and different gods, but that would open up a whole other conversation. So we would just downsize this conversation to Shazam's villains. His rivals would be a bizarre group of characters ranging from a worm named Mr. Mind to the intimidating Black Adam, who would definitely be an Egyptian patriot. Black Adam is Shazam's premier arch-nemesis that can match him blow for blow. A fight between these two in real life would be epic, especially when caught on camera. But it would also cause destruction to any location of the fight. We're talking about cars flying, buildings used as weapons, and safety of people used as a pawn to get the upper hand. With Shazam's enemies, we would also have the physical embodiment of the 7 deadly sins. Can you imagine how much of a wreck these people would cause onto society if they were set loose upon the world? How would the world powers react to Shazam? The likes of America, Russia, and China would most likely feel threatened that a single person could come close to wiping out the entire army if there ever was a war, and will probably develop a weapon to neutralize Shazam. They will spend money and time researching on trying to channel the powers that make Shazam who he is. They would also probably come up with a super soldier program to counter any potential battle with Shazam. Shazam would probably have a limit to the areas he could be a superhero all over the world. There are many layers to Shazam, like his family, his ability to transfer his powers to others, the moment he lost his powers and acquired new powers. And if you'd like to know more on that, go to your closest comic book shop and start reading the stories. You will not be disappointed. But now we turn the question to you, viewer. If you had the power of Shazam, what would you do with the power? Would you travel to outer space and discover the universe? Would you protect the weak, or would you just keep the powers all to yourself? Thank you for spending a few minutes of your day. The most successful movie of all time, and this is not because the studio bent our arms to go watch it. It is because of the build-up of 10 years to deliver a satisfying ending to story arcs and relationships. The movie takes place in the MCU, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is filled with distant technology, aliens, and other realms of reality. So what if we lived in the MCU? Would we have found the cure for cancer? Would technology have wiped us out? Or would heroes end up destroying the world? That is what we'll talk about today on Green Click. By the way, be a friend and subscribe, click the notification button to get alerts, and like the video to help us make more videos you love about our amazing continent. Let's dive in. There is so much to digest in this video that we definitely will only cover the surface of everything that could happen. But if you want to watch a previous video on it, what if the Avengers were real, click the link in the top right corner of the video for some entertainment. But if we lived in the MCU, the world would be vastly different from the one we live in right now. This would mean moments in history would be altered. First, World War II would have played out differently, with the way Captain America changed the war against the Axis powers. We would also have visited the moon much earlier than the 40s with the technology at hand. This would also mean we have been in contact with aliens of all kinds, including the Skrulls, the Chitauri, and the Kree. We would have eventually met the Inhumans and witnessed Loki's assault on New York. When it comes to technology, we would have machines fighting wars for us. We would also have the scientific knowledge to shrink people, and we would not be strangers to mutation in the human genes that would bring forth mutants like the X-Men. Magic would be more defined if you lived in the MCU, as you could mess with souls and go to the dark dimensions and meet Dormammu. Asgard or Wakanda would be awesome places to visit on your vacation if you can somehow fly through the Wakandan cloaking device or travel via the Bifrost Bridge. The downside to all of this, it would be expensive to live in the MCU due to crazy people looking for world domination. Owning a shop in New York would be risky business because you have no idea when Luke Cage and friends would be trapped in your restaurant, or if you are traveling you would be on edge hoping that the Vulture would not destroy your ferry, or the Avengers are not having a civil war at your airport. It would be a dangerous place to live. Imagine reckless copycats mistakenly causing death on a street level. Or what if you were attacked by a person who claims to be under mind control? That would even change the justice system. Superheroes would be so ingrained in our culture as they would affect our movies, sitcoms, music, and literature. Big companies would want to endorse our heroes, and we could even fear that a hero would live long enough to become a villain. Imagine the psychological trauma on a hero who may have seen lots of death in their lifetime. One of the biggest recent events that happened in the MCU was a Thanos snap. If you were deemed surplus to Earth's problems, you would have been snapped away for 5 years. You would have left some family and friends behind, and you would be missed until the Avengers ultimately saved the day and brought you back. The result would vary based on the life you left behind. If you were married, your significant other could have moved on with another partner. They could have gone into financial depression, or they could have stayed alone, waiting and hoping that you would return. But if you survived the snap but lost a loved one, this would create a whole bunch of emotions and directions in your life. If you lost a father, a mother, friends, or children, you would go through the standard human emotions of grief, depression, and possibly hope. And when they would come back from the snap, an abundance of joy would overwhelm you, knowing you have a second chance of life with the ones lost. If you have reached this stage of the video, we'd like to thank you for sharing your time with us. But comment below who you would want to be if you were living in the MCU. We'd love to hear your side of this. If you'd like to be informed when we roll out new videos, give us a like to help us with the YouTube algorithm. Share this with a friend and drop a comment if you disagree or would like to request a video. Till then, brothers and sisters, have a nice day.